about a year ago. Is that Alex, a year ago, something like that? So this kind of follows on from the talk on timber. And yeah, we sort of looked at locally growing, the importance of growing timber locally. 50% of the embodied energy is in transportation of timber. And we import 80% of our timber. And so, yeah, there's a real need to grow our own timber near to where we build with it. And this one is on, talk to you today about hemp. And Paul here, Farmer Paul, as I call him, kids call him, has been working with growing hemp for a while, and they're doing a project, DEFRA, that he can talk to you about as well. But timber and hemp go hand in hand because it's a sort of non-structural material, mainly at the moment. There are, structural blocks that have been developed, but the carbon's a bit higher, and so it's, timber and hemp, I think, are the two magic ingredients of the moment. So me and Paul both think that, that hemp should form an essential part of the construction of the full farming, and that it should form a part of it sort of imminently, given the crisis we're in. So we are proposing that buildings should, heal the land they stand on, and the materials are not mined, but they're harvested. So this is really a little sort of manifesto, really, to grow buildings from UK hemp and timber. You appreciate it's a massive subject. Time's tight, so this is a kind of high-level fly past, as it were. So there's a bit of time at the end, just to get some questions going at the end. So I think talks about embodied energy. We need to be conscious of what our buildings are made from, and that although governments are very conscious of energy in use, the sort of embodied energy, if we accelerate sort of synthetic carbon-heavy materials now, we're only going to have to catch up further down the line in 10, 20, 30 years time. So it's, embodied energy is the big nut to crack now.
Can I just jump in really quickly?
I've got a flat white and a cup of tea.
Me? I've got a coffee already.
Sorry, it's not.
Oh, this is Alex.
And a cup of tea? Perfect.
Thank you.
All right, thanks.
So from the early sort of 19th century, we used sort of local materials with a low carbon footprint. And I think the same is true really in farming. And then, through industrialisation, we started changing the way we build in terms of creating sealed boxes using more synthetic materials. And with that came huge emissions. It kind of directly syncs with the industrialisation curve, classic curve of carbon emissions. And what's crazy, I think, is that when you take construction, which is 39% of UK emissions at the moment, 11% through embodied energy, 28% through energy use, and you combine it with farming, which is sort of 15 to 20% if you include production of food and farming. So if you shove all that together, you're talking about nearly 60% of the emissions, I think, which is, I just think is astounding. It's even more astounding that construction is sort of 6%, 5 to 7% of UK GDP, but yet it forms 39% of emissions. Anyway, I don't want to dwell on global warming for too long, but only to say really that, the IPCC report basically says that, based on the current rate of emissions, we've got 8 years until we exceed this cliff edge, which is at 1.5 degrees. And so it's not business as usual, particularly in construction and farming. We need to, we need to change stuff. We need to do it now. So Paul can tell you a bit about the woes of farming.
That's the challenge we face. So I'm going to look at, hang on, we've got any farmers in the room? Right, I'm not a farmer, to begin with. That's your farmer sat right there. But I have been talking to farmers for a long time, so we've discussed a lot of different things and issues in farming today. And the angle I'm going to come from is very much from the challenges that we see in farming. Farming is really, really difficult. These are seams that we're starting to see more and more. And we have a crisis in soil. That's what we've got. So we have a crisis where we've been used to chemical farming for quite a long time. and we need to understand how important the soil is. Now, I'm just going to lay it out flat. The soil is a home for biology. In making a home for itself in that soil, that biology draws down carbon from the atmosphere and it creates structure in the soil because it needs somewhere to live. In doing so, it increases the soil's capacity for holding water. Soil holds water. Plants don't get washed over by the rain and get their water that way. Well, they do a little bit. But the majority of the water that plants need to grow and everything else needs to live in the soil, comes from the structure of the soil. It holds water within it. Really, really important. And this is what we've lost here. We've lost soil structure. There's not enough carbon, there's not enough biology, and particularly in an arable situation where you're cropping plants for food, for example, it can be quite intensive and you're not giving the soil a chance to recover. You're not planting plants that will enable the soil to rebuild itself. Okay? So we are in a little bit of a crisis in that respect. We also are in a bit of a crisis as farmers. We need diversification. We need options. You know, we've all seen Clarkson's farm, I'm sure. You've seen that he had trouble with his OSR, his oilseed rape one year. Caleb loved his oilseed rape, but it all failed. And that's because it's becoming more challenging, both with the climate and both with the fact that these crops are becoming, what should we say, the pests are becoming resistant to pesticides and so on and so forth. So we have a limited number of options for farming in order to build our soil. So from the farming perspective, we are looking for options and we're looking for things that we can plant in our rotation with other things that are going to help us to build soil. I haven't said a word about hemp yet. Hemp could be one of those options, and it could be a big option because farmers are looking for things which have multiple outputs, diversification. Growing hemp or growing something like hemp isn't a case of we're going to grow that instead of food. That's not how it works. In a farmed system, in a rotation, in a mixed farming system, we can introduce these crops amongst our other crops in order to protect the soil, in order to build the soil, so that we're all healthier because the soil is all going on in it, more biology, and the plants therefore benefit from that, and so do you in the long run. So the crisis from farming is slightly different, and so we're looking for opportunities in order to improve our cropping systems because we're limited. I'm going to stop there. We'll talk for hours.
But yeah, in the same way that the soil is destroyed, we've got a crisis in health in terms of our buildings. So we used to create sealed boxes. What we create now is sealed boxes. It's not breathable skins like we did pre-19th century. And that comes with lots of issues in terms of pollutants and indoor air quality. So nearly half the homes surveyed had elevated VOC levels. 13% had sort of formaldehyde levels that were higher than World Health Organization minimums. And around 47% of homes surveyed didn't have any nighttime ventilation. And so we've got a health crisis in terms of our buildings, where we spend 90% of our time. And for me, forget all the carbon absorption, what it does to the soil. The kind of USP for me of hemp is this ability of it to create these really stable, healthy indoor environments where it sort of provides a moisture buffer. It breathes naturally, far more effectively, arguably, than sort of mechanical system in a passive house system. So this is a picture of Snoop Dogg, famous picture of Snoop Dogg smoking a joint in the early 2000s, around the time I was at university. And I think if you had told me then that we were on the cusp of a possible hemp revolution, I wouldn't have believed you at all. I think it's, now it's becoming, people are talking about, hemp as an industry, hemp as a crop, and not considering it as a, connotations to sort of recreational terms, really. But Paul, I don't know, tell about a few words about the legalities of when it became legal.
I don't know Hugh, about the history of the legality of how you get it onto farm, but I know what's happening now. So we are part of a project which is just on this board just here. Part of that project, we're doing many things in this project, and one of the parts of it are looking into hemp, which is partly what we'll talk about shortly. But some of the things that have come from this pressure, this lobbying, discussion that's been growing, within our industries is that the things are starting to change. And as a result of all the funding that's going into this sort of research and the things that Tim's doing and the architects in the room, we're starting to see a bit of change. So now we've been able to achieve our license on the whole farm as opposed to just defining particular fields. So previously it used to be particular fields, and it could be quite tricky depending on whether or not those fields were next to driveways or public, where you can find public or main roads. Now we're able to do it on a whole farm basis. And that has many sort of implications because it means that you can start to plan. You know, you don't have to just limit yourself to just particular fields. If you're doing a mixed farming system, you have a rotation. You're moving things from field to field. And if you can't do that, it's a bit restrictive. It's really important that you do that because the part of the rotation is to improve soil. And you need to be able to shift it around. So, the fact that you can now get the license for the whole farm and move it as you need to is really, really important. The other thing is that now, it used to be the case that you apply for a 3-year license and you'd have to reapply then at the end of that 3 years, and you might not get it. Now they're doing an automatic second term of 3 years on the license. So if you get the first 3 years, all being well and good, providing nothing bad happens, then you'll get potentially 6 years of cropping, which again means that you can plan. Another reason why we can plan a little bit more now than we used to be able to is because you can carry over your license to the next season if you like. You know, when you declare that you're going to plant it, it's a bit more flexible. So if, for example, you want to plant it this autumn, let's say you want to plant it next spring, and the weather happens, or you can't get hold of the seed, you've got all these plans in place, potentially spent money getting a license, and you wouldn't be able to plant it. You'd have to do that all over again. Now what they're saying is they'll give you a bit of flexibility so that you can push it over to the next season. So if there are unforeseeable circumstances that stop you from planting it, weather, seed availability, etc., you've got the option to push it back a little bit. The other thing is that we're hoping that they're going to start easing up on the THC content, which is permissible for the agricultural crop. So at the moment in the UK it's 0.2% of THC, that's the active substance that Snoop Dogg likes. Now in Europe it's 0.3%. So they're already a little bit more flexible. It sounds like a tiny amount, doesn't it? But straight away, I would imagine that tiny amount means that they've got options of more varieties than we have available over here. So they're starting to make noises that they might consider changing that limit. They haven't changed it, but they're making noises to suggest that they might. And then finally, they're also making noises that they might reduce the application fee. So at the moment, it's £600 each application that you make. It's quite expensive. It will be the things that you've got as a farmer to buy. So ideally, the more that price comes down, the more accessible it will be for most people. But this is a maybe at the moment. Those last 2 points, the content and the pricing, we're hoping will change.
Yeah, so, this wasn't an industry sort of 2 decades ago at all. And I'm worried about time here, so I'll fly through this. But basically, there's some really great people that I've sort of met in the last few years. I've got to say, I'm not an expert. We've got a building down the way that we can show you a few pictures on that's going up now. But I've spent the last sort of couple of years researching this with Paul and others. But I'm absolutely not an expert. But this hempcrete, as far as I can make out, started in the 1980s in France. And what happened was there's a lot of historic buildings in France were sort of patched up and renovated with cement-based materials, things that wouldn't breathe basically. And then the frames would go rotten and then they sort of developed hempcrete as a way of refurbishing and upkeeping whole historic buildings in the 80s. Bear in mind that no one was growing hemp in the UK up to about 1993, which probably squashed a load of development, So basically in the early kind of 2000s, there was, there's some sort of key people. Henry's, you're probably, I should have a picture of you up here. No, you've been going up. But it's the early industry, and it takes people, strong people, to stand up and take the dive. But yeah, Alex Sparrow, this guy here, he's got some hemp right on his face. We've been working with him on this new build. He also is part of this project, research project that's going on, so we'll talk about it. He's been on there since 2005. This chap here, who I was talking with you, Henry, about, supplies the vast majority of hemp in the UK. He's from Driffield in Yorkshire, next village to where I grew up, actually, really. But yeah, his father started doing it ages ago. This chap here, Ian Pritchett, just moved the technology on massively. I mean, he's amazing actually. He started a company called Lime Technology, got loads of investment, you know, pioneered prefab panels, all sorts of bits of innovation. And he went bust in 2008. Anyway, he started up another couple of ventures, including Green Core Homes, that have got this, I think he want to deliver 10,000 homes by 2030. So it's these early pioneers that, you know, you've got to have a lot of respect for, really. So, yeah, what is hempcrete? Well, it's hemp shiv, or herd. I'll pass some a little bit around. Mixed with lime and water. So it's, yeah, kind of 5-1-1, 5. You can see how light it is. This is some French shiv, which is a bit finer. They've got better processing capabilities than we have in the UK. And this is the insulation. Lots of varying types. And this is this is some of the shiv that we mix with. I don't know if you want to pass it back, but we mix this with the lime and
We'll explain the different parts of the plant in a second on the next slide.
So this is a sort of pre-made hempcrete block, of which there are, we did lots of experimentation with different binders and different shiv types. This is a bit of wood wool insulation actually, but this is the quilt, hemp fibre quilt. And Paul will explain a little bit about how it fits in with the with the cell structure. But it's, as I said before, it's, you know, all of this is not load bearing. It's good under tension, but under compression it's not good. But they have developed sort of blocks with different binders in that you can load up. But they're not as efficient in terms of carbon absorption, and they're not as good thermally. And the R value and the U values aren't as good, which we can go into. But yeah, Paul, I'll let you tell people about the plant structure itself.
Yeah, so you hear these words like fibre, shiv, and things like that. Does anyone know the difference between fibre and shiv? Go on, someone knows.
Well, the shiv's the air, what we call, the fibre's the outer stringy bit.
Excellent, right, good, because it's not obvious at all necessarily, and I certainly had to learn with doing a project to explain in a minute. So the shiv is the stuff in the bowls, which is all chopped up, and that's the stuff which basically forms the aggregate for your hempcrete. So that always takes the ballast and the sand element, when you're creating normal concrete, is replaced with the shiv. So that's what the shiv is. It's all the centre part of the plant, all chopped up into many, many pieces. So on this diagram, it's this part, effectively, the centre part, is all broken up into tiny pieces during processing. The fibre is the outer, just as you say, it's the outer sort of fibre, because if you get any long strands, and that was what we would have hemp rope from in the old days, and hessian saps probably, and that sort of thing. Very, very tough. I would suggest any of you come up, and if you haven't already, have a feel of this, until you feel it, if you think you're strong, if you can break that real well, this stuff is breaking our equipment trying to harvest it. And until you come up and you feel it like that, you won't truly understand how strong this stuff is. It is unbelievable. So that's where it gets its strength from, these fibres that run the length of the plant. And you can harvest those, and obviously they have certain characteristics that we want to use. But it's not just the shiv and the fibre, what it also is the seed. That's a product that we can use as well. And actually we're doing a project, in addition to this project here, we're doing another research project which is looking at investigating how we might use that in a culinary way in Catherine over the road. So this isn't just about building buildings, it's also about feeding people. And I've no doubt, I'm no expert, Agri will tell me, but I've no doubt there are things in hemp which are good for you. Cannabinoids and things like that. I don't know, I'm not an expert, so I'm not going to pretend.
Right, the omegas in it really. There's not a lot of cannabinoids that get into the oil.
Right.
Yeah, so the cannabinoids are really in the flour rather than actually in the seed.
Interesting.
So they say it's the best ratio of omega-3 and omega-6 for a human, better than fish.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
That's what we're hearing. So we're thinking, thinking from a farming perspective, we're farming a crop which is covering the ground and potentially a break crop in between your production crops that you typically grow. It's a weed smother, it's a soil improver, it's keeping the biology alive in the soil. You've got a crop that you can harvest for construction, but you've also got something for human consumption as well. And there are varieties which do both. There are varieties which are better at one than the other. So there are multiple purposes of this plant. It's not just about construction, and we'll be experimenting with the food element of it as well. So on the next slide.
Yeah.
So just going to go on to look a little bit like this. So why is it so strong? Why is it so impressive when you go around? Well, that's because the structure of this plant is it has loads and loads of little tubes in it. And the reason it's got loads and loads of little tubes in it is because look at the size of it. So it's going to grow. It's going to grow very, very quickly and very, very tall. It's a very aggressive plant. And that means that somehow it needs to, as efficiently as possible, transfer the moisture from down there in the soil all the way up through the plant to be able to survive and to put on the leaves at the top and to compete with its neighbours. So because it has to do that very efficiently, it builds these tubes that go all the way up the sides of the plant. That's a cross-section there. And that's what gives it its structure. That's what we're tapping into in order to use that strength. But also, because you have structures, tubes, which can carry stuff up and down, imagine what benefits that has in construction. So you have air pockets that hold moisture and air. And so these whether it's in the fibre or the shim, you're getting the benefit of these little tubes. And that's what makes it so strong. If anybody using a scaffold pole, there's a reason it's a cylinder, because it's pinky strong. And no one's too appreciative to convert it. But that's why it's so strong, and that's why we're so interested in it, and that's why it's such a unique crop in that respect. What else have I not covered? Roots. If it grows, if it's a big aggressive plant and it needs to drag a lot of water and nutrients up into the plant, it needs a decent root structure to do that as well. So the fact that it is an aggressive plant means that you get a lot of roots for the period it's in the ground as well, which is only what, 4 to 5 months or something like that. Is that about right?
Yes.
About 4 to 5 months, depending on the weather.
Sort of thing.
Yeah. So it's only in the ground a short period of time. So it develops everything very quickly. And so this is why we're so interested in it. Above ground it's big, below ground it's big. It's doing a lot in a very short space of time. We also, I said about crop diversification earlier, farmers need options to fit into their rotation potentially, even if it's not a main crop. And also the subsidies to be had for putting in cover crops. Potentially in the future, we're hoping that this will feature in those subsidies. You know, it's a good crop to have for many, many different purposes. And hopefully the government will recognise that and farmers start being paid to plant it.
Yeah, so the cell structure in terms of construction is completely unique in the sense that they've done loads of trials on things like sugarcane and other species of plant. But yeah, so there's lots of benefits. I think probably should start with its insulation properties. So these air pockets the herd mixed with the lime, you can achieve UK building rates of 300 mil basically. And so it's a very, very good, effective insulator. Might be slightly thicker than PIR rigid insulation, but it's an insulator nonetheless. But what's sort of more impressive, really, is its R value. So the U value is a sort of insulative factor, and the R value is the heat transfer through the buildup. So if you've got 40 degrees of temperature outside, by the time the sun goes up and down, this stuff can soak up the heat in these air pockets. And that really is the missing factor in UK building regs at the moment, is that, you know, we're all striving to hit U values without thinking about the R value. So other qualities of it is its amazing fire resistance. If you get a blowtorch from here, put it right up to it, it won't combust at all. It's got really good resistance to bugs and mites. And then I think the other thing to say, really, what we've noticed when going to the flat house in Cambridge, for example, is its acoustic qualities. It's got amazing acoustic qualities. But these air pockets here, and the ship itself, has also got an ability to absorb moisture. So they used it, there's a big Adnams distribution centre, I've actually got a slide on it further down, where they used it to sort of passively control indoor humidity. So it provides this moisture buffer, and sort of facilitates sort of healthy space.
Tim, are you going to talk any more about R values after this?
R values. Yeah, I mean, the R value really is the heat transfer.
What I was just going to say is that as farmers, we have a challenge because of global warming or climate change. The reasoning, not much of it known, but it's happening. So it's getting warmer. I'm very, very lucky. I was able to put air conditioning in my house when we renovated it recently.
Yeah.
I did. Because now we're getting a month of 30 degrees now every year. It's becoming, things are getting warmer. So from a farming perspective, we need a crop that can grow in those sorts of conditions. But we're also seeing that challenge. Buildings also need to satisfy that challenge. They need to get rid of heat, not just keep it in. We used to be a cold country and all we needed to do was keep warm. Now we need to get rid of heat as well. And that's, I think, where hemp comes in. It can do that as well as being, as well as your U values, you've also got your R values. I'm no expert,
but you can feel sort of how light it is when you pick up, when you pick up the hempcrete. It's really, really light. And that's because of these air pockets that can trap the heat. So that the heat transfer it stores it up. It acts as a thermal mass, a thermal, sponge, if you like. So if we look at what the benefits are in relation to conventional construction, I think it's quite sort of useful. So this is a typical new build, four-bedroom house in the UK, and the typical wall construction is either brickwork outer skin, rigid insulation in the cavity, blockwork internal skin, and then your plasterboard linings, or brickwork outer skin, PIR insulation with a stud work on the inside. So both of those build up with the right amount of rigid insulation gives you 0.18 U value. But what you get with this is 70.29 kilograms of carbon per square metre when you're using blockwork and slightly less when you're using timber. But the amazing thing is that the PIR insulation, which is a petrochemical, that loads up the carbon. So in these buildings at Sheepswell, I think it was a 17-ton saving on carbon for the two buildings from using PIR insulation. So if we now look at the kind of hemp equivalent, you can still get a house that looks the same. You can have your pastiche 4-bedroom house. But what's amazing is if we put a render on the outside, we don't bother with the brickwork, we're talking about a net sequestration of 34.7 kilograms. So the load is minus, it's not positive. We still get our 0.81 U value, but on top of all of that, we get this ability to create really stable, healthy indoor environments. And for me, that's really important. And again, you see here, if you wanted to have some brickwork on, you're talking about more or less neutral carbon, 1.79. But yeah, so the ability of this plant to absorb carbon is mightily impressive. I think I'm right in saying that to build a 3 to 4 bedroom family house, it takes about 2 to 3 acres of hemp, and that absorbs the same amount as a pine plantation on the same acreage over 20 years, whereas the hemp's doing it in 3 to 5 months.
It's important to think about how that carbon is locked up as well. So I think saying that you're drawing it down, a field of hemp in some ways can draw down more carbon in that short period of time than a woodland. But a woodland is far more beneficial because it's there for a long period of time, has lots of other benefits. But the point, so it's one thing bringing it down, it's then what we do with it next. That might mean it's part of a rotation and move on, and it's stored in the soil and the bugs and the swimmers keep it there, and then we can utilise it for follow-on crops. Or you lock it up in a building when you harvest the crop, and I think that's the
I don't know whether we should sort of touch on cost a bit here. I mean, the cheapest form of external walling is rendered blockwork. So hemp at the moment is about the equivalent of a kind of passive house, red cedar, nicely detailed, rain screen walling system. So already we're not too far away, and the thing's not scaled yet. And I think that's also a very sort of exciting thing.
Is that got a bit of load going over inside the hemp?
Well, it's got stud work.
So can you sit for all?
Yeah, yeah. Obviously, you'd have doubled up, trebled up, whatever you need at certain points. But I mean, there are isocore, hemp span. They've developed load-bearing blocks, but the binders, you have to have more binder in it, and you lose a bit of U value, you gain a bit of carbon, and yeah, I haven't used them before, but yeah, that technology is advancing. I think Paul, so do you want to say a few words about cropping?
Yeah, brakes equipment.
Yeah.
We've got down in the room, Henry, over the corner there. He's been harvesting hemp for seed granted.
Two harvesters, two Henrys.
Or three. Three,
Three.
actually, one second as well. So what's, few, 10 words, what's your experience with harvesting hemp?
It's very tough, and we have got quite an old combine, and you can hear it struggling because it's so strong and fibrous. I mean, they're not really sort of taking the seed, it's not even a fibre variety.
Yeah.
The kit just doesn't, obviously that is a bespoke bit of kit for the job, but there isn't really a lot of machinery out there to cope with it.
I think old stuff's the best.
Yeah?
Really?
We bought a class 7070, so like a cab, 50 years old combine, and that's amazing because it's so simple. You know, you go and put it through a Lexion with a rotary separator. Well, that's what we did when I first started doing it, and it was a nightmare. So keep it simple, and it was easy to get locked up. But yeah,
So it's a tricky thing. It does require specialist equipment in some cases. It doesn't necessarily need to be new, but it does need to be the right kit that can cope with it, that's built properly, and you can fix it easily and all the rest of it. I mean, I've seen bits of kit. I mean, you can see some shiny new bit of kit that can go this way. As part of this project, we have also spoken to some of the other guys that are harvesting hemp that have made their own bit of kit. Huge, great, it's terrifying. You would not want to be stood in that crop when they go through it. You've got huge, great, imagine huge hedge trimmers, 3 different heights. One at shin height, one at waist height, one at head height. You know, you're not going to survive. So because it is just such a huge crop, and look at it there, up over those wheels of those tractors. So these plants here, they're by no means as big as they get. They go 10 feet tall for those of you who know about it. Up here on our soil, it's light brashy soil. We don't get them growing quite as tall. We need a bit of input, but it serves a purpose. But hopefully you don't necessarily need all this new swanky kit. You've got to spend what, $500,000? Yeah, I mean straight away that's a barrel, right? So if you have got old kit that can cope with it, then you know it is.
Well, I grow for seed, which is a dwarf variety.
Right.
So the there's two varieties. I would love to grow fibre, but I don't have the equipment for it.
Right.
So that's it. You know,
There's
that was the problem with it at the moment, is the availability of kit, the technology in the kit. Obviously in Germany they're bashing out stuff like this, but they've been growing hemp forever.
Yeah. So
And that's why we're really behind with it.
Yeah. So I think that's something that we need to do more work on is making it affordable for buying a kit to be able to achieve this, or adapting other kit that if someone comes up with some genius idea. Great. And then I think on the next one, was it you? Yeah, that's it. So this is, I think, a video of our friend Henry here doing some harvesting. Yes, it looks like a pretty poor hemp crop. Guilty, because we're on light coastal brash up there with that much soil. But in the area that we put a lot of digestate, where it was sat before we applied it, that's where these ones came from. These others, like you can see, are a lot shorter. That is a fibre variety. Oh no, so that was a seed variety being harvested there. We harvested a fibre variety which we had the other side of the field already. We needed to get rid of it. It didn't do very well, so we just chopped it in, used it as green manure. So it held the soil for the period that it was in, adding that carbon back to the soil. It has a purpose, even if you didn't harvest it. And you know, there's loads of purposes for hemp beyond the ones we've discussed. So we've got things like bedding, obviously we've got construction, we've got textiles, we've got rope, and of course we've got the seed that we discussed. So many purposes for it. So it's as I say, we love the construction side of it, but it goes beyond that. So that's.
Yeah, so the processing of the hemp that you've alluded to, Henry, it's in France they've got some really, I don't know a lot about processing tools, first and second, but in France they've got sort of lots of cooperatives that have formed and are forming. I think Belgium is probably the sort of global leader really in terms of the construction sector. But there is a variety of construction processing sort of techniques that need to be developed really. so that it can become more readily available, cheap to purchase. And yeah, the idea of creating a network of local processing hubs for farmers seems to be very sensible, possibly through cooperatives. I'll just quickly fly through some precedent slides, so I think we're running a bit short of time. It's just really to say that there are a lot of hemp buildings when you start looking into it. A lot of them self-build. This is a housing scheme in Northern Ireland. Where they've obviously done a rendered precast hempcrete block. The one thing we found on this build out there is that it takes a long time to set this stuff. And when you're trying to deliver sort of efficient buildings in a commercial environment, the time that precast takes is not great. Particularly, you know, if you've got ALTs on a contractor of whatever it is, £5 grand a week or something on a big site. There's lots and lots of factors, environmental factors, the weather, the heat, the moisture, that could inhibit precast setting properly. So that is a bit of an issue with it. But you know, when you get precast blocks, precast panels, sandwich panels, composite panels of the hemp fibre, hempcrete, and also hemp fibre, it's great. This is the tallest hemp building in the world, in Cape Town, weirdly. It's 12 stories, made from prefabricated hempcrete blocks. This is a nice project. This is done by Ian Pritchett, the guy who was one of the pioneers of hemp. And this uses very, very thick hempcrete blocks. And this is for admins, zero carbon building, and as well as providing that R value buffer for, you know, to stop the thing overheating, mitigate the heat passively. It also acts as a moisture control, a humidity control for the storage of their products. And this is the flat house in Cambridge, which was a really pioneering build. Cambridge University and others that we visited, and what was amazing was the quality of the space that was achieved. The acoustics were really nice. The space felt really nice, and again, a really stable climate year round. This was cast in situ panels, in timber stud work. It's the kitchen. And this is our little building that's going up just down the hill, which will be ready next year. It's a long linear barn structure, sort of replacing some existing barns that were there. So the scale had to be quite sort of minimal barn-like. It uses this diagrid frame, which Alex has been engineering beautifully. But yeah, to prevent a long ridge beam, we've got this diagrid structure which pushes all the forces out to these end gables and Cotswold stone. But the big thing for this is that we're using cast in situ hemp throughout the walls. Internally, we're using this fibre, hemp fibre, in the roof, 220 mil of it, plus 80 mil wood fibre. We're using lots of cork below the ground, and the whole building is going to breathe both through the roof, the walls, and the floor. And so we can, go back to these historic principles of construction and create this healthy space. And we've been working with UK Hempcrete and others, trying to decide which is the best sort of hemp mix to go for. There's lots of different binders and different hemp types out there at the moment, but it's still kind of, you do get the impression it's still early days and that there's still more to do. But the binder itself, I should say, really obviously contains lime. Lime's, is not as bad as Portland cement in terms of its carbon, but it's still got a carbon load. It's a widely available natural material. But obviously, when you make cement, you heat lime up, and so the carbon in cement is obviously a lot worse. But yeah, the building down the hill is made from English hemp and English shiv, and we're going to expose the face of it. Alex Sparrow, our hemp guru, doesn't like exposing the hemp. He likes to cover it up into the breathable plasters. But yeah, it does give us an acoustic quality, and we can sort of showcase it as well. So yeah, you can come and see the building when it's done. And this is a little video just showing us, there's Paul, proving he gets his hand dirty. But this is so there's this metal strapping, which is on every cast layer. And I think one of the big things we learned about this is that when you mix it, how you mix it is key. And so it's got to be the right texture. If you over-mix it, then you get globules in it, and then you obviously lose your ability for it to perform, thermally, and regulate moisture and all the rest of it. But we were building it up in these 6-inch layers and pressing it down. And Alex was saying when he does houses out of this stuff, so you imagine a 300mm cast in situ wall built up in 6-inch layers. You can cast the whole thing, in a week. So it's very, it can be very, very quick. But what's not quick is this drying time, So but this is a internal render of the end of the building. We're looking forward to seeing that. And this is the current state of the cast in situ hemp wall, which should give us a really nice internal finish. It's a zoomed in version of it. So we've got a lining, the black thing in the bottom left-hand side of the picture, and that sits tight up to the Cotswold stone. And then behind that we've got our fibre insulation, and then we've got our cast in situ wall on the inside. So it's very, very foreign concept to architects, and to me when I studied this, it feels very odd not having a cavity against a cold external skin masonry. But that's how it's effective, is when we have this closed system that can breathe right through the build-up. So it's really about trying to look to the future and saying, well, in 20 years' time, is there a network of processing plants and farmers feeding into it? I've read that if we take 2 to 3% of the arable land in the UK, there could be enough hemp to supply the construction sector, as in to replace concrete blocks. We use 90 million tons of them a year. So it seems to me like it's a really achievable concept. Get a finance in place, get the business plan in place, set up these cooperatives, and try and get these local processing plants up. And then it's a sort of call to action, really, for architects to educate clients, specify hemp, design with the soil in mind. And if we source materials locally, it has a massive impact on carbon in terms of the transportation. We know that. So, I don't know, from a farming point of view, looking at this vision for the future, whether that's an achievable idea, I don't know, but I'm really excited about it in terms of, the scale economy for bringing down costs, the impact on health, the impact on the environment.
You're excited about it, we're desperate for it as farmers. We need options. We need to be able to look at other possibilities for taking the place of crops which aren't succeeding. But the thing about hemp is that from a farming perspective, it has so much potential because it can do so many things. The fact that it's a construction material, the fact that it's a human consumption crop, the fact that it draws down a huge amount of carbon and stores it in soil, which is what this project's all about. We're looking at studying how much carbon it can draw down in that period of time that it's growing, and also its effects on the follow-on crops, which is other parts of the research that we're doing. But I think it's a really, really exciting crop because it just has so many potential uses. There are other crops out there, they sound fantastic, but farming's in a state of crisis. You know, you talk about so many years left of harvest left in the soil, depending on where you breed. That may or may not be the case, but the point is the soil hasn't been improving with the way that we've been managing it. It's been degrading. So we now need to start turning that corner and start thinking, like you said, construction with the soil in mind. Well, there's a thought. You know, is that being done at the moment? I mean, I think that's part of the challenge, isn't it? It's getting it into the mindset of the industry that might use the crop to realise that there's such a potential here, and then for the government to recognise that, and then to start supporting farmers and providing subsidy, because it's really, really difficult to make a profit. Farmers do not make a profit at the moment, or very select few do. They're lucky if they break even. You know, we need to start turning that around. So people are attracted into farming, and they can look at interesting crops like this. Go, oh, hang on a minute, something a bit different here, something a bit interesting. Not only is it benefiting, you know, not only is it interesting, but we've also got all these other potential benefits. It's all back to the soil as far as I'm concerned. So if we could have that local network of farmers having another income stream for a crop that might be their sole crop, but could also be introduced into their rotation, I mean, what's there to not like about that? It's just about getting that ball rolling, and often it comes from. So I think more lobbying, more of this research, more of these talks, more of hearing from the industry just how useful this crop is. And I think slowly, the two ends of the spectrum, the farmers and the construction industry, will find common ground, and hopefully by the aid of the government, and we'll start to create a strong connection, because not enough people know what goes on out there in those fields. They all think it just magically happens. You know, there's guys that don't go out to the rural landscape very often. We're all there a lot, you know. Sorry, is anybody from the big city here? Right, excellent. No brain. But yeah, so.
Can I make a point? Two points really. The first point is that photograph tells you the story of soil. Look at what's happening with the River Thames and the River Severn. Your soil has been washed out to sea, and that's, you know, doesn't surprise us involved in farming. You know, that's happening, and that's as a result of annual cropping, largely in the farm next to the rivers. Well, we sort of know that, so we do need to stop that, manage that. But I think the problem we have here is we don't have the value chain. So the dots on the map are really important, because right now we can, as farmers, we can grow the crop. It's not easy, I'm sure. You know, those that have grown it for some years, I've only had 1 year growing it, but it's you know, we can get there.
It's a lot easier than putting wheat in the ground.
Yeah.
Like, because you just plant it and you need it. Like, you don't have to go with a sprayer 12 times in its lifetime and all that. Like, it is actually a very easy crop to grow. It's more the harvesting and the processing which is the tricky side of it, because there's not enough technology out there, because we've been left in the dark for so many years of it.
Absolutely. And also, if you had the market, if you had the demand from whoever it might be that can add value to it in the building, because I mean, insulation is a cheap product, I presume, and you know, and we're trying to produce another cheap product. We just need to value it differently. We need to value it in the world we live in, not in the past economic era that we come from. Because clearly, you know, we have massive challenges. And I was really intrigued when you said about building plus agriculture, or building plus food systems, is 60% of the carbon emissions.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a really important crop then.
Yeah.
Crops like it to solve that problem.
The potential for solving is huge, because what is it, 70% of land in this country is farmed agriculturally, and all of those farms need to be growing something of some nature. And so the potential for us to be able to have a big impact with this is huge.
Yeah, but from my point of view, it's there, it works, and it's already cost neutral with a decent form of construction. There's no scale economy. So, you know, construction is really, really difficult to change. It's not a very nimble industry in terms of change. People still want to buy a traditional house. So it's kind of an attitude thing, I think, is one of the biggest stops. We have government support that would enable investment and to me, be there as a backstop. But I think education is one of the biggest factors, I think, for construction.
I think it's also about educating people away with it. It's not marijuana. You know,
Yeah.
you see it ganja leaf and everything.
Yeah.
That's why I trouble trying to sell it, because people still associate it. But it's,
Yeah.
it's no, you could smoke the whole field and not get high.
Yeah.
It's banned.
That
That was the whole point of why it got banned back in the day, and the whole propaganda
Yeah.
stuff behind it and all that. It was all down to it would dominate the timber market, the timber world.
Yeah.
That's why it got banned because of paper.
Yeah.
That's why hemp was banned, because those newspapers were made out of obviously wood, and the timber industry was so influential. So
Right.
they saw this plant coming along and went, oh God, let's lobby against it. That Reefer Madness film came out, so everyone's like,
Really?
cannabis is bad. Yeah.
That's why.
Yeah. I mean, the same, a hectare of fibre hemp that would grow in 4 months can do the same amount of paper as the same amount of trees for 20 years. It's the same thing. So
No.
you've got to think of what that would have done to the lobbying industry back then. It would have killed it. And that's why they banned it. That's why they made up all this stuff saying it was bad.
Yeah.
Which is a shame, because we're in such a green place now. If it hadn't been banned. It really would.
No, it's phenomenal.
Yeah.
So it's 1993 was it the license got lifted?
Yeah, I think it was America. It was, I think about 1940s where they decided to ban cannabis in general. But you know, it is cannabis. That's what it is. It's just a distant cousin of marijuana. The boring cousin, some might say.
Yeah. And cannabis comes from the word canvas, isn't it?
Correct. Yeah. Well, canvas comes from cannabis.
Right.
The word canvas was created from cannabis because all the sails were made out of it.
Yes.
And the rope and rigging. It was massive. For human, they say that the rope was as important as electricity is today.
Yeah.
Because you connect it, you do everything with rope.
Yeah. And the Egyptians made paper from it.
But the Egyptians took hemp to their tombs. What does that say about it?
Yeah.
It's the medicinal. You guys haven't even touched on the medicinal side of it, which is huge.
No. So I think I'm right in saying that 60% of it in the UK is currently construction. 30% is it clothes and other products?
Yeah, I don't know any stats on that. Really.
I think a lot gets used in car dashboards.
Yeah.
They say that the US being countries you can house yourself, clothe yourself, feed yourself, and medicate yourself just from one plant. So effectively, when they used to go to expositions back in the day, they take hemp seed because they pitched up on a desert island, or the desert island is probably the wrong term. They pitched up somewhere. They had hemp. They could do all of it: clothe, feed, medicate, build. It's a one-stop shop plant.
No, I'm completely sold, and I'm going to lobby and write to my MP and lobby, the RBA and all the rest of it. But the wastage is interesting as well. If you saw this up with the saw, you don't need a mask on, and in construction there's always a lot of waste. But you just see, the shiv lying around it with biodegrades, and it's a nice process to build with. One last slide. Let us grow our buildings and we grow our food. We care on local soil that serves future generations. And I think, that's it really. Advise you all to lobby people and get it out there. Because it's, my Vincent experience, it's good stuff. But, have you got any questions? Yes?
Presumably it outperforms Rambler and Hempcrete, yeah?
So, I don't know a huge amount about the comparisons, but the hempcrete definitely outperforms Rambler thermally.
Yeah.
Well, but it's thickness, isn't it? So if you take 300 ml of hempcrete, 300 ml of Rambler, the hempcrete will outperform it. But rammed earth could be good for a project where the soil conditions on the site are particularly good.
Yeah. It just become
Yeah.
as opposed to
Yeah.
50 years.
No, contextual design is important, but they do mix it with lime in the same way that you mix the sugar and lime. Yeah. Yes.
So, okay, from a UK farmer, I've got the license, I've found myself a combine, or made some kit, and so right, I'm gonna drill it and grow it either for hemp or fibre or a mix of both. Who do I go to sell it? How do you find
Well, I would
someone? So
Yeah. Well, you would go to a processing facility, presumably, which could be a cooperative. I don't know.
The problem is that this doesn't currently exist. We don't have an answer to that question, which is why there's £6 million there being spent to try and figure it out. So, you know, this project's got £6 million from DEFRA, and that's part of the whole process, is working out a value chain, understanding what's required for different materials and different processes, to try and just keep pushing things forward, do a bit of research as to, you know, what would be required to create these networks that we're talking about. So, unfortunately, it's not our part of the project, that part. We are demonstrating the hemp, just look at it, it's lovely, and going to use it in the cafe as well, but our part is more to do with the herbal A's and the forage for the animals and things like that. But it all part of the big holistic picture.
We have scientific Guyton Power. Guyton Man Farms have got a site where they process the fibre.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So are they chopping up, or is that like fibre fibre?
But they're trying to add value. I mean, I can't speak for them, but
Is that part of the DEFRA project?
no, it's completely separate. But there are organisations out there who are developing higher value products. If they're going to invest hundreds of thousands or millions of pounds, not specifically it's coming out talking about Guyton Power, but you know, they're going to need to see a return on that. So building product is a cheap thing, and they're going to struggle with that bit. But if you get into the BMW car dashboard or a tube train or something, or a clothing product, I imagine that there's more money in there. So maybe that's the answer to your questions, is that you need to develop the value chain. It's not good enough to have just get grown on a farm and be highly and stressed carbon, which of course is what the farmer wants. But the farmer also needs to be paid well enough to do it. So it needs to be more profitable than wheat and other crops or milk or whatever.
Yeah, it's definitely more profitable wheat if you can sell it.
Yeah.
But I mean, I have managed to sell all of mine, but it goes to the most random things. Most of my oil I've pressed goes to racing pigeons in Ireland.
Really?
Because it's the racing pigeon wonder oil. It goes to 20 quid a litre to pigeons, whereas I was selling it for 7 quid to kitchens for human consumption.
Yeah.
So it's But the other thing is, have you seen the hemp wood that they make? Like
For burning in
no, for aesthetics. Like they make like a 4x8 for actual like plywood. Effectively, they make that in America and it looks amazing.
So in the ceiling of the new building, we're using a hemp span timber panel. We've looked at bio products. There's some good hemp bio products up there. The flat house in Cambridge uses them externally and they're starting to warm a little bit. But yeah, I mean, there's quite a lot of different products out there.
It's the investment to get it to the point where it's actually viable. No one's. I was thinking the man who owns Amazon should do it because how much cardboard he uses.
Yeah.
You know, you could replace that all with hemp like that.
Yeah.
And he should take someone like that who's got enough money to go, do you know what? If I change this, then everyone will go in. Everyone will follow. But it's such a big plunge to start with.
So, Ian, did you just say that they were struggling to get this to a point where it was profitable?
Well, you need a lot of equipment to do any of this work.
So it's that upfront cost.
Six-figure or seven-figure numbers.
Yeah.
And then you're going to churn out this very cheap living product. So inevitably, the pioneers, the early adopters of the techniques will want to add value. So I just think, how do you find a way to make your dots like have 150 dots around the country where local farmers can grow to local, because there's no good carting it around the countryside and trade. It's really expensive to do. We need somewhere relatively local to supply to.
So I think Nick in Driffield, his processing kit was about 2.5 million or something. But Alex was saying that in France, to get the finer grade stuff, it's kind of 15 million to make those big numbers. But,
There are companies working out there within our project who are trying to develop farm-based small factories to do this, and that's really exciting. So, but they need backing. They need to have people who then specify and buy it, and
Sorry, we had the partners on the back of it, that's why I was going to grab it. So that's the problem. I picked up the wrong one, sorry. But the 23 partners in this project, and it's been a really interesting exercise getting to know them, including hempcrete developers and all sorts of different value chain organisations. But yeah, we are spending money on trying to work this out. We're trying to do that.
I think there's no doubt about it that the government aren't concentrating on this enough. Industry bodies aren't concentrating on this enough.
So I can write in like this or something.
The thing is though, if they're saying, they don't just chat about it, but if Lib Dems were forming it and they're talking about legalising marijuana,
Yeah.
you know, so what does that do to the hemp industry? Because that's kind of, surely that would just, you could then grow that in your own garden at home if you wanted to.
Yeah.
So again, we're all very much governed by,
Yeah. Yeah.
which is very frustrating.
Yeah.
There are
Yeah.
lessons we could learn from North America that has legalised
Correct,
it. You know, are they using their byproduct in a way that could inform how we could in the future? Is that something we could inform our direction and approach to getting the government sort of
I
involved?
think
in the
Belgium and France are more advanced than America.
So it's
I
not a
think
question
there's
of
only a couple of
legalising.
states where it's legalised.
I think it was like, there was a farm bill in 2018 or something, that hemp wasn't actually legally allowed to be grown in the United States at all until 2018.
Wow,
So
yeah.
it's like in the hemp side of it, they're actually
Yeah.
absolutely far behind.
Yeah.
Again, historically,
Yeah.
the whole place was founded on hemp, like literally, all the, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
George Washington, all those original, although they're all
Yeah.
slave owners, they all were hemp. So it's like they thought that was the independence of Americans, the ability to
Yeah.
do all these things themselves and be away from the foreign market.
Yeah.
I was going to say, I've got a book here if anyone's really interested in that story or just generally the other uses of it.
Yeah.
It's a guy called Jack Herrick.
Yeah, well done.
This is like,
Yeah.
he's sort of the hemp guru, as it were. He was a big advocate for it, and yeah, he kind of got all the historical stuff, and like, this is how much it's been used throughout our history. And so then
Fantastic.
it's kind of hard to find, but you can get it online.
Yeah.
You get
Who's the
it.
author?
Jack Herrick.
I should also have a little plug for our
I can
friends
pop it on the
from
table there if anyone wants to have a look. I can just leave it like it's after.
Alex Sparrow's book on hemp construction is also there. Yeah. But it's amazing that, you know, the Industrial Revolution was started with cotton, you know, and this could be the next cotton.
Can I just jump in here?